Morning. This hearing is called to order. I am President James Brown, the Montana Public Service Commission. I am the presiding officer for this hearing. With me today in the Bollinger Room are Commissioner O'Donnell and Commissioner Bukacek. Commissioner Pinocci is delayed, coming down from Great Falls, but will be joining us this morning. Commissioner Fielder is also with us this morning via Zoom. So party should know that Commission Attorney Laura Wachowski will be advising the Commission in this matter. Commission staff are also present in the room today. This hearing is being transcribed by a court reporter with Wazowski Court Reporting, and we all know Ms. Fox, so welcome back. Thank you for being here. For the record, the time is now 9:01 a.m. Today's date is Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. The commission and its staff are appearing from Helena, Montana in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. This is the scheduled public hearing at docket number 2022.07.077 involving Northwestern Energy's annual natural gas tracker application, requesting interim and final natural gas rate adjustments. I will now take appearances of a council. Please introduce yourself and who you represent for Northwestern Energy.
Good morning, Mr. President. Mitchell Warbell on behalf of Northwestern Energy.
Good morning, Commissioner Sarah Norcott on behalf of Northwestern Energy.
Good morning, Jason Brown, Montana Consumer Council. I'm joined by Mr. Paul Schulz.
All right, good morning, Council. As you're all familiar, recesses will occur at convenient times during the hearing. But before we get to the hearing, and this will be the time and place for public comment. The Public Service Commission welcomes comment on today's matter. Is there any public commenters in the room? I see one gentleman, so a little different. We'll have you come to the witness stand this morning. Please state and spell your name. Good morning.
Morning, President Brown, members of the commission. My name is Nick Fitzmaurice. That's Fitzmaurice. I'm with the Montana Environmental Information Center and just wanted to share a couple words with y'all this morning before you kick off this hearing. In this application for the annual rate adjustment, Northwestern has cited that this is going to amount to approximately a 9% increase to residential natural gas customers' bills, which is around $50 annually. This on top of the recent increases in electricity bills that we have discussed so thoroughly in this space that are facing residential customers. And I wanted to point out that methane gas as a fuel source, as can be seen here, is just not affordable and not something that we should be continuing to support here in Montana. I know that this rate increase is specifically impacting customers who burn methane for heating in homes and cooking their food, but it also has broader implications for the use of the fuel source for energy in the state. Even while these gas prices are volatile and increasing and the utility is adjusting rates to account for that, Northwestern Energy still is planning to operate the Yellowstone County Generating Station, which will also be using methane gas. And that is a cost that has not yet been approved for customers. But if it were to be approved by the PSC, then the ratepayers would also be paying for the cost of that plant, as well as the cost of operating it with the rate of return. And that cost of operation includes methane fuel costs. And though these are different items, the natural gas for end use versus the natural gas electricity generation, it's the same fuel source, and there's only the limited supply, and the prices all affect each other. So I wanted to take this opportunity to point out that as we continue to plan for energy use in Montana and face this rate increase for natural gas, that really we should be considering what role methane plays in our energy system and how all these different pieces are going to continue to impact already burdened residential customers. And that is all keeping aside the harmful environmental effects of methane, especially throughout a system that has nearly 1,000 leaks by Northwestern Energy's estimates. And that methane goes into the atmosphere, has climate warming impacts many times greater than carbon dioxide. And there's lots of damages from that as well. So wanted to put that all out there for y'all as you're discussing this rate increase, and I hope you have a fruitful conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Good to see you. Any other public commenters in the room? Good morning. Please come forward. Good morning. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Paulette Hutcheon, Hutcheon. I come as a ratepayer. I'm a former educator and am quite distressed about what I'm seeing as far as the public service operation. It is with dismay that I observed last October's Public Service Commission hearing. I was here. I spoke at that hearing, but now feel a much greater urgency to speak here today for me and the rest of Montana's residential ratepayers. It appears that the public part of the name Public Service Commission has been completely forgotten by the members of this publicly elected body. The eloquent and pleading messages of 20 or more members of the public during that last hearing and all the statewide hearings prior to that were completely unheard by you. It appeared that an agreement to grant Northwest Energy its 28% rate increase compared to August of 2022 had already been decided outside the view of the prying eyes of the public. And now we're back to hear yet another request from Northwest Energy for an additional over 9% rate raise for methane gas. At the last hearing, Mr. Brown tried to defend this commission's actions by noting it wasn't as bad as it could have been. The commission, he said, excluded the reliability rider Northwestern had requested to recover costs for new power plants outside of the traditional rate case. He added, quote, "Not a dime of Northwestern's expenditures on the gas plant it's building in Laurel has been incorporated into this rate case, according to Northwest," unquote. How disingenuous is that? Every additional dinosaur-esque power plant that Northwest builds or buys into is paid for by the public. The more they own, the more they make off of us. They are making investments that are poisoning us and our environment in the interest of extending the use of fossil fuels to our last dying gasp, including their own, by the way. Incidentally, fossil fuels are becoming much more expensive than alternative energies. It's just, I'm in dismay, as I say. We are all in this together. It appears that leadership on this board and the executives of Northwest Energy have completely lost sight of that. The damage done to ratepayers includes everyone in this state, even wealthy decision makers. It's time that the 1900s industrial revolution thinking stop. People on this commission make over $110,000 each, paid for by the people of Montana. It's time to show some empathy and concern for those who are paying. It's time for this commission to stand up for the people of Montana, all of them, not just corporations living in the dark ages. It's your job. And that's all I'm saying right now, but maybe not ever.
All right. Thank you for your public comment this morning. Any other public commenters in the room? Any other public commenters in the room? Any public commenters online, Mr. English? All right. Tyler Halligan, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, Tyler Halligan, TYLER HALLIGAN. I'm here representing the Montana Sierra Club chapter. We have hundreds of members across the state that we're speaking for today. I just want to express my deep concern regarding this request for the increase. That would translate to an annual increase of $53 for the average customer. which, as Nick said, comes on the heels of the recent approval of a substantial 28% electricity rate hike. It's disheartening to witness Northwestern Energy persistently investing in unnecessary, expensive, and polluting fossil fuel resources while attempting to pass the financial burden to its customers. The approval of such massive rate increases raises serious questions about the accountability and responsibility of the utility company, especially when considering the environmental impact and global movement towards cleaner energy sources. In the broader context, U.S. investor-owned utilities requested rate increases totaling a combined $16.89 billion in 2022, an upward increase of 14% from a record-setting 2021. This is tracked by Regulatory Research Associates. This trend raises concerns about the affordability of essential services for the general public and emphasizes the need for regulatory bodies, such as the Montana Public Service Commission, to carefully scrutinize such requests. Moreover, it's crucial for this body, which is tasked with balancing the interests of captive ratepayers with the financial health of regulated utilities, to consider the significant compensation that Northwestern CEO receives, approximately $2.6 million per year. It's frustrating that we are tasked with paying these increases when the CEO walks away with so much money. This substantial figure should be deemed an essential component when evaluating the financial health of the utility company, especially in the context of proposed rate increases. As a resident of Montana, I believe it is the duty of the Montana PSC to safeguard consumers from overcharges by utility monopolies. The recent electricity rate hike has already placed a significant strain on the majority of Montanans, and it is essential that the commission fulfill its role in protecting the interests of the public. I implore the commission to deny this proposal. The relentless pursuit of rate hikes at the expense of regular Montanans must be addressed to ensure fair and reasonable utility costs. I also urge you to consider the long-term implications of continued investments in fossil fuel resources, both in terms of environmental sustainability and economic viability. In conclusion, I trust that you will prioritize the well-being of our citizens and fulfill the responsibility to rein in excessive rate increases by utility companies. Your commitment to protecting the public interest and ensuring a fair and sustainable energy future is crucial for the prosperity of Montana and its residents. Thank you for your attention on this.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Halligan, for your public comment this morning. Any other public commenters online, Mr. English, that you see? All right. We did have one person reach out to us and indicate that they would like to make public comment, but they didn't leave their full name. So is June on? June? Okay. Any other public commenters in the room? Seeing none. All right. This concludes that portion of the hearing for public comment. So we'll move back on the record for the formal hearing. Are there any informal questions from the parties at this point in time? Now let's move to the evidentiary portion. So based on the parties' pre-hearing memoranda, there are a few items we should address as preliminary matters. First, let's address requests for the remote appearances of witnesses. And I understand there might be some shuffling around this morning.
That's correct, Mr. President. First, Northwestern would request that witnesses Danny L. Williams and Elaine A. Rich appear remotely.
Does MCC object to that?
No.
All right, so that request is granted. They can appear remotely. Any other witness accommodations, Mr. Brown?
We'd requested that Mr. Donkin be allowed to appear remotely, Mr. Chairman.
An objection?
No objection.
All right. Mr. Donkin will appear remotely as well. All right. Let's see here. All right, so we had a request that was pre-filed by Northwestern Energy to have the commission to take administrative notice of certain prior commission orders. This was contained in Northwestern Energy's pre-hearing memorandum. You want to address that?
Mr. President, I'll just withdraw that request for now, so long as the commission is aware that these and the Consumer Council is aware that we would rely on some of those orders in our post-hearing briefing.
All right, Northwestern's request for administrative notice is withdrawn. All right, let's move to the admission of data requests and responses. Mr. Brown, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move for the admission of all data requests and responses filed in this docket.
All right, is there objection to that by Northwestern Energy?
Northwestern does object to the entry of data request MCC 24C and D and MCC 33 on grounds of relevance, Rule 402.
All right, would you like to address that in any manner beyond what you've already done?
Just to reiterate, those data responses concern a different commodity and a different system. And Northwestern maintains a position that they have no tendency to make any fact more or less probable with respect to the fixed price gas purchases in this docket.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would, of course, agree that those are dealing with a different commodity. However, I think it is relevant here. I don't think the commission needs to stick its head in the sand with respect to past experience with hedging. Hedging is hedging. It's very similar, if not identical activity. And we're talking about the same company. There's been a long history of hedging, both on the electric and gas side that has been disputed and contested. And we've seen the same result and the same arguments on both sides with respect to the hedging activity. The electric hedging was addressed by our witness, Mr. Donkin, in his testimony. So he opened the door to this. And I think it's an issue of the weight you give this evidence, not whether it's relevant here. I don't think there's a risk of confusion. I think the commission can look at the experience with electric hedging and compare it to what we're looking at here. And in fact, I think that comparison will clarify and help the understanding of the gas hedging program. Thank you.
Would you like to address that?
Just briefly, Mr. President, I believe that this concerns just allegations that are not proven. Just as a reminder, none of those prior transactions were found to be imprudent.
All right, I'm prepared to rule on this objection. So, counsel, the commission determines the relevancy of evidence by deciding if the evidence has any value in proving the proposition for which it is offered. As stated in Montana Rule of Evidence 401, evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be in absence of the evidence. Regarding data requests MCC 024c and MCC 24d, those requests ask Northwestern Energy about off-system electric hedging transactions after July 2022. As we know, Northwestern's application seeks recovery of costs associated with its procurement of natural gas, not costs associated with the purchase of electricity after July 2022. Post-July 2022 electric hedging transaction information will therefore have no tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to determining the prudency of Northwestern's purchasers of natural gas at issue in its application more or less probable. As for data request MCC 33, that request asks Northwestern to confirm what the commission ordered in 2016 regarding electric hedging. Again, the subject of Northwestern's current application is the recovery of natural gas costs, not electric costs. What the commission did or did not order in 2016 regarding electric hedging, therefore, will have no tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to determining the prudency of Northwestern's purchases of natural gas at issue in its application more or less probable. Therefore, I will sustain the objection. All right, having ruled on Northwestern's pre-hearing objections regarding data requests and responses, I will now entertain the motion to admit all data requests and responses that were not subject of a sustained pre-hearing objection.
Northwestern would move the admission of those remaining data requests and responses.
Mr. Brown, any objection?
No, Mr. Chairman, I believe I moved for those data requests to be entered.
Okay. I just want to clarify that. I sustained the objection to the three data requests that were discussed. Okay, moving along. I will note that the commission issued term protective order 7894B in this docket. I presume council are aware of that. Correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, in light of that, witnesses and their counsel must be mindful of questions and answers that reveal confidential information in an otherwise public hearing. To preserve the confidentiality of information protected by the commission's order, we may need to close portions of this hearing to hear testimony or address questions concerning confidential information. I rely on counsel for the parties to notify me when a question or answer may reveal confidential information. It is your burden, not mine, to make the appropriate objection at that time. At that time, we will then pause the hearing to give our staff time to stop the live stream and close the hearing room to anyone who should not be present during the discussion of confidential information. Upon the conclusion of any confidential portions of this hearing, we will again pause to restart the live stream and open the hearing to the public. Any questions from the parties about this process?
Northwestern.
Mr. Brown?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Finally, are there any other pre-hearing matters that need to be addressed at this time, such as accommodations to witnesses, et cetera?
Yes, Mr. President. This time, in the interest of efficiency, unless the commission has any questions for these witnesses, Northwestern would first move for the admission of Danielle Williams' pre-filed testimony and exhibits.
Mr. Brown, any objection?
No objection.
So admitted, unless there's a change here.
Just confirming if these have been pre-marked.
Hold on, please. Yeah, what is the pre-marked exhibit number, please?
It will be pre-marked exhibit number 1, NWE 1.
Okay.
And Northwestern would further request that she be excused from this hearing permanently.
Ms. Brown?
No objection.
All right. Ms. Williams, you are excused. If you're online, you are. So short morning for you. Any other requests for accommodation?
One more, Mr. President. Northwestern would move the admission of Elaine A. Rich's pre-filed testimony, which will be pre-marked now as NWE Exhibit 2.
All right, Mr. Brown?
So long as Ms. Rich is available for cross-examination, potentially, I don't have any objection to admitting her testimony at this point.
Response to that?
That's fine. I would just ask that she be temporarily excused, and we'll just proceed with our first witness on the contested issue.
All right, so NWE 2 is admitted into the record, but by agreement of council, Ms. Rich will be available for questioning if need be. Any other requests for accommodation?
Nothing further from Northwestern.
Ms. Brown?
No, thank you.
Okay. Very good. All right, let's proceed then to opening statements. Would Northwestern Energy like to make an opening statement?
We would.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, commissioners, staff, and to court reporter, and to my friend on the other side. Natural gas prices beginning in 2022 reached highs not seen since 2008, with prices exceeding $6 per decatherm at times. The industry and forward forecasts indicated that prices would continue to stay elevated, yet customers needed reliable natural gas to live and work. This case boils down just to one thing, and that's how Northwestern provides reliable natural gas service to its customers that is reasonably and stably priced. Northwestern has a natural gas portfolio of company-owned production, storage rights on its transmission system, and market purchases to satisfy load, and those include contracts and spot market purchases. For years, Northwestern has made fixed price purchases for the delivery of future natural gas. Every year, Northwestern comes to this commission to account for natural gas costs from the preceding year. We'll call it the tracker year. In other words, Northwestern at that time requests a true up for financial investments made for and which served customers during that tracker period. We don't earn anything on these transactions. So Northwestern filed the application in this proceeding last May, seeking to account for supply costs from July 2022 through June 2023. So this boils down to just one question in this docket, and that's whether Northwestern, just two sets of Northwestern's fixed price purchases made during the 2022 to 2023 tracker year were prudent. I'm going to describe what the evidence will prove in this case. 2022, as I mentioned, was far from a normal year for natural gas markets. Northwestern took action to protect its customers. Northwestern was aware in spring of 2022 that natural gas prices were volatile and quickly rising. In fact, market data flagged the potential for prices to reach 2008 levels, where at times gas traded higher than $11 per decatherm. So Northwestern removed 12% of customers' required load from exposure to high and volatile market prices. The following factors were present at the time Northwestern made its initial round of purchases in summer 2022. First, there was the Russian invasion of Ukraine and record liquefied natural gas exports from the United States. Second, storage balances in the United States were well below average after a cold winter. Third, warm spring weather led to record natural gas quantities being used for electric generation across the United States. But the market uncertainty did not dissipate that summer, and factors beyond Northwestern's control remained present. By fall of 2022, when Northwestern decided to procure just 20% of supplies for summer 2023, Henry Hub, a critical natural gas pricing point, was at a 14-year high. U.S. storage levels remained well below average. Record amounts of natural gas were still being used for electric generation in the country. And liquefied natural gas exports were still high given the demand from Europe and Asia. And on top of that, the Freeport liquefied natural gas facility in Texas, which exports natural gas, was expected to restart after an explosion, therefore increasing exports even more. Northwestern's witnesses will all testify that these factors warranted action. And the evidence in this case will prove that both rounds of purchases were consistent with and accomplished Northwestern's publicly stated, commission-approved, predefined objectives. Those are to mitigate risk and provide rate stability. On the contested issue, you will have sworn testimony from two Northwestern witnesses, Joe Steinmetz, who's the Director of Energy Supply, and Luke Hansen, who's the Manager of Gas Supply. Joe Steinmetz's testimony will describe Northwestern's balanced approach to natural gas procurement. And it's essential to know that Northwestern's customers are at a natural short position, and this means that 84% of their natural gas supply must be procured from the market. Mr. Steinmetz will testify about the benefits of risk management and the importance of a balanced supply portfolio, including fixed price purchases and market purchases. Luke Hansen, Manager of Gas Supply, will describe Northwestern's natural gas procurement program, and he will further explain the purchases for summer 22 and summer 23 and demonstrate the extreme volatility of the natural gas market at the time. Mr. Hansen's testimony and evidence will also show the data and factors Northwestern considered and evaluated before making the fixed price purchases. Now, twice in 2022, Northwestern publicly communicated the unique market conditions and the company's intent to remove a portion of its supply needs from extraordinary volatility. In two letters to this commission, Northwestern described its plan to curb customers' exposure and to provide rate stability. Further, Northwestern has provided its 2020 gas plan to this commission and has made consistent decisions with that plan along the way. The subject purchases here also followed the commission's own natural gas procurement guidelines and goals. Notably, Northwestern's balanced approach still provides customers with access to the market. And it also mitigates volatility and provides rate stability. This approach overall reduces exposure to extraordinary price increases. You will also have expert testimony from Tim Sexton of Gas Supply Consulting from Houston, Texas. Mr. Sexton has around 35 years experience in the natural gas industry, from engineering to marketing and supply planning. For more than a decade, Mr. Sexton has been the president of Gas Supply Consulting, which provides services for a wide range of individuals, groups, and entities in the natural gas sector. Mr. Sexton offers his expert opinions on natural gas price risk management programs, Northwestern's fixed price purchases, and market conditions leading up to and at the time of those purchases. Mr. Sexton's expert testimony will conclude that Northwestern's fixed price purchases were well within acceptable industry practice and were reasonable. Now, you may hear from the Consumer Counsel's witness about hedging losses, but the evidence presented by Northwestern will expose why that characterization is incorrect, relies on perfect hindsight, and doesn't account for the fact that the fixed price purchases did exactly what they are intended to do, but reduce the amount of risk to which customers are exposed. The evidence will establish how there were no losses and why 100% reliance on index pricing is not the right choice for customers. To conclude, Northwestern will prove that it followed commission-approved guidelines and its own gas plan and energy risk management policy, and made procurement decisions based on the facts and circumstances known at the time. The evidence in this case will show that Northwestern was not trying to beat the market, and why designing a program in that way is wrong. A proper price risk management program is never designed to beat the market. This commission has acknowledged that no one has a crystal ball to predict the market and that purchasing decisions must be evaluated at the time they are made. Northwestern's fixed price purchases were effective. They reduced natural gas market exposure and provided customers with a measure of rate stability. Northwestern hopes to continue serving its customers with reliable, stable, and reasonably priced natural gas. Northwestern takes this responsibility seriously. Thank you, commissioners, staff, and to my friend on the other side for the opportunity to present Northwestern's case.
All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Brown, did you want to present now or reserve?
I'll present now, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, commissioners. We've been here before. I know that a lot of the commissioners haven't personally, but this body has been through this issue before. Feels a little bit like deja vu all over again. Hedging is really akin to, as Mitch stated, the company doesn't make money off of these costs, and they also don't suffer losses. So this is really akin to gambling with someone else's money, something I don't think any of us would be comfortable with. This is actually a relatively straightforward matter for this commission to decide, and it is obviously in your hands. What you decide in this case will definitely affect, I think, what the company does going forward. I don't think the facts are in dispute here. It's really a question of argument and how those facts are interpreted by the parties. And I think the question is whether the premium that we are definitely paying for intra-month, that's intra within the month, and cross-season price stability is worth the cost. Because the record does show that we are paying a very significant premium. And I think it's odd to say that we're protected from higher prices when the record shows that we paid more as a result of this activity. So I don't feel very protected when our bills are $11 million higher than they would have been if they'd simply done nothing. So the value of the stability that we're purchasing, I would assert, really has virtually no value to ratepayers. Now, it may have value to the company that faces the volatility, but ratepayers don't face that. So I want to say, first of all, with respect to this volatility you keep hearing about, that seems to be the very narrow focus of the hedging program here. Rates don't change more often than monthly. I think that's a fact that's lost in the noise here, that our gas supply rates do not change more often than monthly. So all volatility that exists that the company faces within a month, ratepayers are completely insulated from that. We pay a net amount over a month, and that includes price spikes and prices going up and down. It's after the month goes by, we look at everything, and that's what the rates are based off of. Once a year in the annual gas tracker docket, there's an annual amount that's amortized over a full year. And until recently, the monthly trackers were also based on a 12-month rolling average. I believe that methodology has changed, but we're still not collecting an entire amount within the course of a month. These costs are spread over the course of a year. And the annual amounts to collect over under collections, of course. So whenever you hear the word volatility today, I want you to ask, over what period of time are we talking? Because ratepayers, again, are 100% insulated from intra-month volatility. So any hedging that's meant to address intra-month volatility is purely for the benefit of the company. So please don't accept that this is being done to protect ratepayers. The vast majority of the volatility we're discussing, ratepayers are insulated from. Also, I think another really important point here is the availability of budget billing, because the company keeps saying that they're doing this for ratepayers. They're doing this for ratepayers. Well, ratepayers who don't like their bills and their rates changing every month can voluntarily opt into a program called budget billing, where their rates stay the same all year long. So again, if you want as a ratepayer, you can insulate yourself from all volatility within a year as well. And it's only at the end of the year when they look at your use and they look at their costs, which have been high and low throughout the year, that your rates would change once a year under budget billing. So please, whenever you hear this, the purpose of this is for volatility, please be skeptical and how ratepayers actually benefit from mitigating that volatility and who's really facing that volatility. I don't think it's fair to say that MCC is relying on hindsight. Our position is that they should have known not to enter into these transactions at the time they entered into these transactions, both based on the lengthy prior history we have with hedging, both on the gas and the electric side. And I believe there has been a disallowance of gas hedging costs in the past, in the distant past, in the early aughts. But that they should have known that prices go up, prices go down, and that at the time they entered these, they should have known not to enter them, and that was an imprudent decision at the time. We're not saying that we know now it was imprudent. We're saying they should have known then that it was imprudent. One of the company's witnesses has analogized hedging to insurance, which is an analogy that I largely agree with. But nobody buys insurance without any regard to the cost. You expect to pay something for insurance because there's a service being provided. It's risk mitigation. But you wouldn't pay anything for insurance. You know, beyond a certain price, insurance becomes cost prohibitive and you simply will take the risk. And you do some kind of cost benefit analysis to decide whether your insurance premiums are worth the risk that you're avoiding. Here, it's not clear what, if any, cost benefit analysis has ever been done, either before or after the hedging activity here. And perhaps that's our biggest problem here. It's not that the result was unfortunate and bills were higher than they would have been if we'd simply done no hedging. It's that there are no parameters, there's no limitations, there's no analysis done before and after. And the company has come out and said, yeah, we're not doing this to avoid costs or to keep bills down. The only reason we're doing this is volatility, volatility, volatility. We've attempted to show that Northwestern has a poor track record with hedging. And I know the chairman sustained the objection, so I won't go on, but I'll just repeat that I don't think we need to stick our heads in the sand with respect to past experience with hedging, whether it's electric or gas, and just blindly hope for a better outcome in the future, or assume that prices will be more or less volatile 1 or 3 or 5 years from now. Hedging increases risk because it adds another layer of decision-making, another layer of discretion that would not exist if they simply do no hedging and rely on the market. There's risk that prices will go up, prices will come down, and there's a risk that we will face higher prices. But with hedging, you add another layer that they will make a poor hedging decision, and not only will we be exposed to market risks, but that we'll pay more because of the hedging decision itself. It takes a lot of judgment and sophistication and variables to decide when to hedge, how much to hedge, how long to hedge. And all of those decisions are being made by human beings who could get it wrong. And that is a risk we will not face if there is no hedging. Now, I understand that exposure to volatility on an hourly and daily, day-ahead basis is stressful for utilities, and that it could occasionally possibly create cash flow issues for the utility. But I would submit to you that this is their job. Ratepayers reasonably expect gas utilities to face the ups and downs of the gas market across seasons and world events. Bills will gradually go up and down with the markets. Utilities should not attempt to predict prices or beat the market. I think we agree about that. If they are going to fix prices, they should attempt to beat the market. But we support them buying gas in the market, which has advantages. There's a reason these markets exist for these commodities. And this may sound cold and cynical, but there will always be something like the Ukraine war happening to gas markets. You know, LNG has gone up every year. Production has gone up every year. I think we've set records repeatedly for LNG exports. There's always things going on in the world where we have price spikes, price events, pretty much every season. It's not the job of a small gas utility in a rural state like Montana to read the tea leaves of world events and make these $11 million decisions based on things that are happening across the world. Again, there's always going to be price spikes for various reasons. And so going into the month and the day and the hour, it's the utility's job to purchase enough gas to meet supply. Occasionally, these prices will be high, but most of the time it's likely because we have competitive, liquid, robust markets. Most of the time, it's likely that gas prices are going to be low. This, again, is one of the benefits of having a competitive market for gas commodity in the first place. So a little unlike previous hedging contested cases, we're not asking the commission today to order Northwestern to stop hedging. We do say we don't think they should do it, but we're not asking this commission to tell Northwestern what it can or can't do. We are simply asking for a disallowance of costs that never should have been incurred and that provided virtually no benefit to ratepayers. It's our position that Northwestern has not met its burden of proof to show that these costs were prudent, that they needed to be incurred to provide service, or that they should be recoverable. If utilities are going to gamble with ratepayer money by speculating on future prices, then they should have some skin in the game. And because there's no sharing of these costs on the gas side, that requires a disallowance in this case. Otherwise, I would expect utilities to continue doing this activity, and I think this commission should expect to continue seeing higher bills as a result of hedging activities. There's no dispute ultimately in this case. This is the bottom line. If Northwestern had done none of this hedging in this case, bills would have been over $11 million lower. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you. That's my opening.
All right, Mr. Brown, thank you. All right, well, counsel, you've certainly practiced before the commission before. So as you know, what we try to do is a universal swearing in of witnesses to save time. So I would ask all your witnesses, whether in the room or online, to please stand, raise your right hand, and I will swear you in all at once. All right. To each of you who are about to give testimony, attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth. Okay. Counsel, again, I would remind you if one of your witnesses is not on right now, please notify me at that time that witness is called so I may swear them in. All right. Then I think what we'll do is we'll just go. Ms. Rich, your microphone is still on. Thank you. Northwestern, please proceed with your case in chief.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This time Northwestern calls Joseph Steinmetz.
Good morning, Mr. Steinmetz. And you have been sworn in?
I have.
Good morning, Mr. Steinmetz.
Good morning.
Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
Sure. My name is Joseph Joe Steinmetz, Stimatz.
And what is your business address?
11 East Park in Butte, Montana.
Who is your employer?
Northwestern Energy.
And on whose behalf are you here to testify for today?
Northwestern Energies.
Mr. Steinmetz, did you submit pre-filed testimony in this matter?
Yes, I did.
You have that before you?
Yes, I do.
And for identification purposes, this document is marked NWE 3.
Correct.
Can you please take a moment to review that to make sure that is in fact your pre-filed testimony?
It is.
So that's a true and accurate copy of your testimony?
Yes, it is.
And if I were to ask you the same questions here today under oath, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections or modifications to your testimony?
No, I don't.
Mr. Chairman, President Bound, I move the admission of NWE 3.
Mr. Brown, any objection?
No objection.
All right, NWE 3 is admitted.
And at this time, I'll tender Mr. Steinmetz for cross-examination.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Steinmetz.
Good morning.
I only have a couple questions for you. You'll be relieved to know. Are you aware, and if you're not the right witness, please let me know since you're the first witness, but is there any analysis done of actual volatility after the fact? In this case, was there any analysis done after the fact?
Yes, I believe Mr. Sexton talked about the volatility of the gas market in his testimony.
Okay, but what I'm asking is whether the volatility that was predicted when these transactions were entered into, was there any follow-up after that to confirm that that volatility did in fact transpire?
So I think the way to think about that is the market is anticipating volatility, and that's the market is seeing the volatility of actual prices and anticipating future volatility. It isn't really a prediction on behalf of any particular entity, but we are seeing that volatility, meaning the prices are changing rapidly by large amounts on a day-to-day basis.
And how do you measure that when you say it's changing rapidly day to day?
So there's a few ways to think about that. One is there are actual calculations you can do. You can calculate the standard deviation of the prices, for example. But the other one is that is really accessible is to look at charts of the pricing, and you can observe from the charts the periods that are more volatile than others, and get an intuitive understanding from that perspective.
And so was that done here?
Yes, it certainly was done by Northwestern in, at the time, looking at the markets, looking at what the price changes had been.
No, sorry, I'm not talking about at the time. I meant at the time that the purchases were actually made, like let's say at the end of the tracker year, was there any analysis done of whether the volatility that was predicted actually materialized?
I don't recall if there's in the record a calculation of that volatility, but again, the fixed price purchases remove the exposure to that volatility. That's the point of doing those transactions.
Right.
So for the portion that we're talking about here, the volatility of the spot prices or the index prices didn't matter. That's what we're doing here, is entering fixed price known prices on those contracts.
Do you think that doing an after the fact analysis of volatility could inform future hedging decisions?
Yes, I think calculating historical volatility could be one of the things that somebody uses to think about future hedging.
Well, and I'm not just talking about calculating historical volatility, but comparing his actual historic volatility to predicted volatility to see how accurate your predictions of future volatility are.
Yes, I think that could be an element of analysis that's done after the fact, and it could inform somewhat future decisions. Yes.
And do we have that analysis in this record?
I didn't present that analysis in this docket. I don't recall whether Mr. Hansen or Mr. Sexton provided that.
Okay, fair enough. And are you familiar with Northwestern's electric hedging activities?
I'm going to object on the same grounds as I previously said, irrelevant.
Brown?
I don't have anything to add besides what I've already said, that this hedging activity is the same across commodities. It's the same entity, and these are the same people doing these activities.
I'll sustain the objection. Please move on, council.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, commissioners, this is now the time for commission questions. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. To follow up on the last part of it, the prediction of volatility, was Northwestern the only predictor of possibility of future volatility, or were there other parties that were saying the same thing or contrary?
Certainly Northwestern was not the only party expecting volatility. And just to set the context on that, if I may, we could observe the volatility and the price changes that had been happening over the prior few months. And commodity prices always will change. Natural gas in particular is a volatile commodity. It will always have volatility. What does that mean, having volatility? It means that if you have a short position like our customers do, meaning they need gas, which hasn't been purchased yet, they have an exposure to that. Volatility means that that short position means that they have risk. The price may go up higher and customers will pay more. So they have that risk. The fixed price transactions take that risk off the table for that portion of the portfolio.
What was the price of gas 6 months prior to the date of the contract? Approximately.
I don't recall that specifically. I think Mr. Hansen could talk more about that, and Mr. Sexton could as well. It was certainly lower 6 months prior to the time that we did the contracts.
Do you have any idea why the natural volatility of gas, why the company waited until this time to enter any long-term contracts?
I don't recall the specific discussions about the timing. I was in a different role at the time. Mr. Hansen was intimately involved in that time period and perhaps could give a better answer on that.
Do you happen to know, to expand a little bit on Consumer Counsel's question, did the price at any time after the execution of the contract increase? The market price?
I would say there were likely days that the price increased, but I think after the first set of contracts that we executed, generally the market went down from that point through the summer.
Okay. Was any experts in the marketplace contrary, saying that they anticipated the price was going to go down?
I don't recall reading that analysis. I'm sure there were parties who have a contrary view, just like there would be on a stock price, for example. There are always parties who think the price will go up and the price will go down. The thing with the commodity markets like natural gas is the price on that day for forward delivery. So we're talking about in the June timeframe for delivery in July and August and September. That price is very public and very well known, much like a stock price is. That trades on an exchange. So we can observe the price. We can observe what it traded at the day before and that day. Predictions about whether that might go up or down vary, but you have to look at the news, the potential for change, all those things. But you can execute at the price that is trading on that day. You can't pick a lower price and trade at that price. And so really, again, what we're trying to do here is not beat the market. We're not trading for speculation. Contrary to what Mr. Brown said in his opening, it's not at all gambling. It's the opposite of that. Customers have risk. They have a short position. they need the commodity. Buying at known fixed prices reduces that risk. It's the opposite of gambling.
Thank you. I recall many years ago that in San Diego, they were anticipating a mother of all storms coming in. And it was going to a particular, I recall a golf course in the area. It was going to put that golf course as predicted under like 12 inches of water. And so they made tremendous preparations for that. The storm never materialized, at least to that level. So I don't know if anybody faulted the city of San Diego or the golf course people or whomever with wasting their time by making preparations for what seemed like it was coming. But the economy, like the weather, is highly unpredictable. I've noted before that as soon as Donald Trump, when he was president, started sending LNG to Eastern Europe as to protect people against the Russia blackmail, that when natural gas was being used as an instrument of national security and diplomacy, that that would put into effect the law of supply and demand, that would increase volatility right there. And so I'm trying to figure out whether or not the company was prudent at picking that time for picking the price. Did they just happen to pick the time when everything changed, at the apex of the price, which would just simply be bad luck? Was it prudent to do? And again, the testimony of Mr. Hansen, but I want to ask you about this. It says in his answer to a particular question, has the commission commented on the use of hedging as part of a default supply portfolio? Yes, the commission provided natural gas procurement guidelines, which include hedging in final order 6683D and docket number, whatever. The guidelines state the utility should, quote, provide natural gas default supply customers with adequate, reliable, and stably and reasonably priced natural gas default supply services. Maintain a mix of contracts, stored gas supply, and other hedging mechanisms that mitigate price risk.
Commissioner O'Donnell, is there a question in here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that is, what I don't understand is how the company, other than long-term contracts, can meet the PSC's requirement for stability.
Thank you for the question. So we think that fixed price purchases, and they don't have to be long-term, they don't have to be multi-year, but seasonal purchases, certainly for the summer or for the winter, are an important element in providing stable prices. We also have some owned production in our portfolio, which we use to serve customers. And so that is also a component of, reducing exposure to the market. But those are both important pieces. We still, and even during this period, make a lot of spot market and index market purchases. So we try to take a balanced approach, and I think it's the right approach. We don't do entirely fixed price purchases. We don't do entirely spot purchases. Per this commission's guidance and per our gas supply plan, we take a balanced approach, and we were completely consistent with that approach in this case.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Vice President Fielder.
Mr. President, Mr. Steinmetz, am I understanding your response to Mr. Brown's questioning correctly that Northwestern did not conduct an after the fact analysis of the actual market changes during the contract period?
Commissioner Fielder, no, that's not my position. I said that I didn't provide that calculation about the volatility of natural gas prices in this docket. we certainly were aware of and looked at the spot price as compared to the fixed price of these purchases after the fact.
All right, thank you for that. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Vice President Fielder. Commissioner Pinochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just 3 or 4 questions. To get a handle on hedging, a lot of my ratepayers in my district have propane. And propane in the middle of winter is extremely expensive. So I encourage my customers to fill their 500-gallon tank in the middle of summer, where the price of propane could be half. Would you say when Northwestern looks at natural gas and they're doing hedging, that's similar to buying it when you think it's a better deal, and that way it ensures that price guarantee for later? Is that a fair way to analyze that?
Commissioner Pinochi, I think there are some slight differences. I think that what you described is similar to what we do with our storage resources. So we buy gas in the summer, some of which is at a fixed price, some of which is at an index price. And we use that gas that is in storage to serve our customers in the winter when typically prices are higher. So that, I think, is an analogy to the propane, is more similar to the propane analogy you gave.
All right, here's a question. When you go into a hedging situation, it's for the benefit of the ratepayer. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
So here's another important question. Is hedging ever done to benefit the profit of Northwest Energy?
No, it's not. We are making purchases from the market in order to meet our customers' supply needs. And the customers are short. They need that commodity. And so hedging transactions, which are just fixed price purchases where the price is known to the buyer and seller at the time the deal is done, contrasted with index purchases where you don't know the price until the day the gas is delivered. Those fixed price purchases reduce the exposure that customers have to the market. They lower the customer's risk, and that is their purpose, and that's what they do. And that's what they did in this case.
Here's my last question. So my ratepayers that do the propane call me and say, Randy, we bought the propane in the summertime. We got it for $1.50 a gallon. Thank you. A month later, it goes down to $1 a gallon, but they already paid to have their tank filled. So now they're complaining to me they could have got a better deal if they would have waited another month. Does this happen in hedging? And then when it does, you're blamed for not making the best deal.
Commissioner Pinochi, that's exactly the Consumer Counsel's position in this docket, that after the fact, it turned out that the price we paid was higher than the spot market price turned out to be. And that's not an appropriate way to judge whether it was a good idea to hedge or not. Again, the purpose of the hedge is to reduce the exposure to the market. We did that with these purchases. It was consistent with our previously stated approach, which we provide in our gas supply plan. It's consistent with this commission's guidance on how we should approach procurement. And those transactions should be judged based on the information that's known at the time you enter them, not after the fact looking back.
So I'll get a phone call where they say, we did what you said, Randy, and you told us wrong because the price went down the next month. And I try to explain, now, wait a minute. I know we want to buy in the summer because it's a better price, but it's hard for me to predict when the best price is going to be. If you bought in June, maybe July, the price would have went up and not down. I don't have a crystal ball. I can just tell you that when the price comes down, it's a good time to buy, but it could go lower and it could go higher. So I would say you and I are in the same predicament when I advise my propane customers, which I have a tremendous amount because I have a lot of counties that don't even have natural gas. Would you say our problem in trying to explain this to the ratepayer is the same?
It definitely has some similarities. And that's why I don't think the right way to think about it is uh, uh, trying to find the time that has the absolute lowest price and buying at that time. I think having a balanced approach is the right thing for Northwestern customers. It may be possible for propane customers as well to do a partial fill at different times, or to leave part of it for the winter, or those kinds of things. But from a natural gas perspective, we do have exposure to the index market. We reduced some of that exposure, customers' exposure, by making fixed price purchases. We didn't do all the volumes. We did a portion of the volumes. I think it was a good balanced approach.
Thank you, Mr. President. No more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Panoche. This will be a good time to remind everybody in the room to silence your phones. You have not already done so. Commissioner Bukacek.
It sounds like from the way that you've answered the question so far by the commissioners, the comment by MCC counsel that no analysis was done before or after the hedging decisions, that you would disagree with that.
I would.
And to get a little more information about the analysis, and I would not be asking anyone to divulge confidential proprietary information, but would Luke Hansen be the best person?
He would. I think Mr. Hansen has testimony about that and could answer that. I think Mr. Sexton also has some testimony, not about Northwestern's analysis, but about analysis of the marketplace in general.
It talks
leading
about
up
the
to that.
financial tools are similar to those available in any financial market.
Yes,
Okay, fine, that's all. Thank you.
sure.
Sure. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Mr. Steinmetz, I'm sorry for forgetting my earlier question I wanted to ask. How does the company account for sales of the gas that it produces itself? Does it buy it from itself?
Commissioner O'Donnell, I apologize. I'm not the right witness to talk about that. I'm not familiar with the details there. I know there are some other Northwestern entities involved in that, and I'm not sure exactly how that accounting works. Mr. Hansen may know more about that.
Yeah, I looked at your title, Market Operations, realizing that's not really market, but thought that you might know. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. All right, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. I have a limited number of questions for you, and you're certainly welcome to tell me if Mr. Hansen is the appropriate witness for this, but we'll start with you.
Okay.
All right, based on your experience, under what circumstances does Northwestern Energy generally believe it is appropriate to enter into a fixed price forward contract for the procurement of natural gas?
Generally, I would say we think it's a good idea to do that in order to reduce customers' risk. We think it's a good idea to enter fixed price contracts. Really, for each season, there have been some exceptions when we haven't entered fixed price contracts, but generally we enter those types of contracts most of the months of a year and most years. And in fact, if you look at the response to MCC 19, that question asked for our historical fixed price and index price purchases, which we provided by month going back to 2015. And we, consistent with our plan and with this commission's guidance, we typically enter fixed price contracts.
All right, so I think it might be helpful for the public that's listening for an explanation of the difference between a fixed price forward contract and an index purchase, if you could just break it down into layperson's terms.
Yes, I appreciate that question. They're similar in one way, index price forward purchase and a fixed price forward purchase. They're actually similar in many ways. They both call for the delivery of a certain amount of natural gas at a certain time, typically a month, or maybe it's a season, but there's a start date and an end date. They both typically call for the delivery of a certain amount of gas on each day during that period. The only real difference between the two is with an index price contract, neither Northwestern nor the seller knows the price until the day of delivery. On that day of delivery, there is what is called a spot market, and there are many buyers and sellers of natural gas for delivery on that one single day. An index is compiled based on the prices of those trades on that day of delivery, and that becomes the price for that forward index contract for that day. And that repeats itself for every day through the, let's say, the 1 month of delivery. So if Northwestern enters an index price contract, it doesn't know what it will be paying on behalf of customers until it happens. So that's why I describe that as having risk. The customers have a short position. They need the gas to heat their homes, and they don't know what the price will be. A fixed price forward contract has what is known to both the buyer and the seller, an agreed upon price that will apply to all the gas delivered under that contract. And so rather than it depending on what the market happened to be on that day of delivery, we would agree ahead of time on a certain dollars per decatherm price, and that will be what we pay.
All right, thank you. There was much discussion, I think, in the opening statements about the volatility of natural gas prices. So based on that discussion, let me ask you this question. Is it Northwestern Energy's practice to only enter into fixed price forward contracts for the procurement of natural gas when natural gas prices are volatile? And if not, why not?
Mr. President, no, I don't think that's our policy. But I will caveat that by saying that natural gas prices generally are volatile. The situation we described with regard to 2022 had certainly some extraordinary events, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So that was definitely not typical, but the prices are and can be volatile even without geopolitical issues. So we typically enter fixed price contracts, as I mentioned, every year, usually for both the summer and winter.
All right, I don't have any further questions for this witness. Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Bubachek?
Yeah, I'm not sure you'd be the right witness, but if you could help me. In Northwestern Energy it's a balancing authority. Not all utility companies are. Not all providers of natural gas are. And I'm just wondering, does that greater responsibility, does that affect your decisions to use hedging? Because you don't make money off this, you don't take risks. The ratepayers pay for it. I get
Right.
that part. But does that increase? It increases the complexity being a balancing authority. So I'm just wondering how that affects your decision to choose hedging or not.
Right. So, Commissioner, we do have a gas transmission system in Montana. So that system moves gas not only for Northwestern supply customers, but other third-party customers as well. But that does not affect the economics of these transactions or our incentive to do them. We still need to deliver the same amount of gas to our customers. They are still going to heat their homes. They're still going to have the same needs. So the decision on whether to enter fixed price or index price contracts is not impacted by that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Panochi?
Thank you, Mr. President. This isn't in your testimony, but I think it's a good question. You might be able to answer it. There must be somebody at Northwest Energy that could say in the past 5 years, the past 3 years, the past 2 years, hedging has saved millions of dollars. There's got to be a chart somewhere. So we can turn and show the public hedging has paid off and it's been a benefit to the ratepayer. Does that exist anywhere? Do you have an answer for that?
I do. Commissioner Panochi, yet first, the intention of hedging is not to beat the market and not to pick winners or to speculate. That being said, there are many, many months that the fixed price turns out to be lower than the index price. And in the response to MCC 19, again, we show that on a month-by-month basis, the amount that we did under fixed price purchases and the amount we did under index price. I'm going from memory here, but I believe there were, in the period we provided, I think there were 76 months that we had fixed price purchases. And in 39, I believe, of those months, the fixed price turned out to be lower than the index price. So it sometimes benefits customers financially in the framework you're talking about. But again, that is not the intention of a fixed price contract. The intention is to reduce the risk and reduce the exposure to the market.
Follow up. If we were to stop hedging, would the ratepayer pay more in the future or less in the future?
Commissioner Pinocci, that is really impossible to say on a forward-looking basis. There would be some periods where the customer would pay more, sometimes when they would pay less. Again, the intention is to reduce the risk and encourage stable prices. So what fixed price purchases do is they insulate customers from exposure to high market prices. Mr. Brown in his opening talked about budget billing and how that keeps bills stable. That doesn't change customers' exposure to the market, though. They still have to acquire that gas, so they still have to pay those prices. We have to pay the prices on behalf of the customer. You can't really predict for a given transaction whether the market will be higher or lower than that. The idea is to reduce the exposure to that. And so we maintain a mix of fixed price purchases and index price purchases that we think is the right balance.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further commission questions, Mr. Brown, recross.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on the last questions first from Commissioner Pinocci. He asked about how much money was saved through hedging. In this tracker period, did we save any money by hedging?
Yes, yes, we did. Your witness, Mr. Duncan, had testimony about some specific fixed price purchases in the summer months in this tracker period. He did not talk about the months during this tracker period where the fixed price turned out to be lower than the index price. And that was the case in several months in this tracker period.
Okay, are you disputing his calculations of the amount spent over the whole tracker period on hedging and the difference between the index and the fixed prices?
No, I'm suggesting that he asked for a disallowance of the summer fixed price purchases, purchase costs, but ignored the benefit of the winter and other months where the fixed price turned out lower.
You're saying he didn't net those two?
I'm saying he didn't highlight those.
Okay, but if Northwestern had done no hedging in this tracker period, the total amount sought for recovery would have been approximately $11 million less. Are you disputing that?
I'm not disputing that.
Okay, so in this tracker period, over all the months, I'm not talking about winter, summer, I'm talking about 12-month period. Not only did we not save money, we actually spent 11 million more than we would have if we had done no hedging. Is that right?
Mr. Brown, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but again, the purpose of fixed price purchases is to reduce customers' exposure to market risk.
I understand the purpose. Maybe this is just the simplest way to get at this, that throughout this case, Northwestern has not disputed the figures that Mr. Donkin calculated that he attributes to hedging.
I believe that's correct. I don't believe we are disputing the math.
In Commissioner Panochi, and you talked about how customers are exposed to market volatility. Can you explain to me exactly how customers are exposed to market volatility within, let's say, start with within a month?
Sure. If customers have a short position, so the gas needs to be acquired at the spot prices or index prices. If the price on the first day is $4 per megawatt or per MMBTU, that's what eventually gets passed through to customers. The next day, if the price is $10 per MMBTU, that's what gets passed through to customers. If the price on the third day is $20 per MMBTU, that's the price that gets passed through to customers. That's an exposure to the market price.
So you're saying customers' rates will change each day?
The rates don't change each day, but the cost that Northwestern is paying on behalf of customers does change each day. So customers have that exposure. The billing mechanism is monthly, so it doesn't go up and down every day, but the exposure is still there. If the price is $100 per decatherm or MMBTU, that's what gets on a given day, that's what gets passed to customers.
And I want to be real clear that I understand customers are exposed to prices, right?
Yes.
But what I'm trying to ask you about is the volatility itself, because would you agree that the prices as they go up and down are netted over the course of a month from ratepayers' perspective?
I don't know if I'd agree with the word netted. I would say that the price, whether it's low or high on a given day, is what is passed to customers. So I think we're thinking of it the same. If the price the first day is $2 and the price the next day is $10, Northwestern pays that to the market for index transactions on behalf of customers. So customers have that exposure. The bill only comes monthly, so all those purchases are effectively summed up and turned into a rate, I guess. I'm getting a little out of my area, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Well, I'm not sure we are. You said Northwestern pays that on behalf of customers. Again, my question is, how are customers exposed to the volatility of the market on a day-to-day basis if they pay the same rate on a day-to-day basis?
That rate is determined by the market purchases. So that price, as it changes day to day, is what gets passed to customers through their rates. So they
But
are
isn't it-
exposed to that price.
But aren't those prices all blended together over the course of a month? So the volatility within a month is something that the consumer never sees.
They don't get a different price on their bill for each day. I would agree with that. I don't agree that they don't see it, because they do see the effect of that in their bill.
How do
Have
they,
that exposure?
how do consumers see volatility on a day-to-day basis in their bill?
When we have seen the market really blow out, and I'll use an example from a different state. We saw, and we saw this actually even in Montana during the same period, I guess, for some of our purchases, but we've seen the price per MMBTU in certain weather situations go to over $100 an MMBTU, even higher than that. Customers who have that exposure pay for that. They don't get a bill on that given day, but it is embedded in their bill at the cost that they pay. They definitely have that exposure to that market price.
Sorry to interrupt you. Isn't that $100 a day price spike offset by potentially lower prices over the course of that same month?
It's the price each day would be different, and yes, the price on different days that would be that are cheaper would also be passed to customers. Yes.
So I guess I'll just ask one last time. Within a month, how are customers exposed to any price volatility?
Mr. Brown, I'm not sure how to say it a different way. If Northwestern is paying index prices or spot market prices, that are $50 or $100 per MMBTU, which we have seen in the market. It's the customers who are paying for that. The customers are exposed to that price. The fact that it is aggregated and they get a bill that might mask that doesn't mean they weren't exposed to that price. They were exposed to that price. They paid that price.
I thought you said that Northwestern pays that on their behalf
And passes the cost of that through to customers, yes.
without the associated volatility.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I'm saying that the volatility Northwestern sees when it purchases gas on consumers' behalf is not the same volatility that consumers see when their rates change.
Mr. Brown, I think what you're saying is because they get a monthly bill, they aren't exposed to that volatility. I don't agree with that. I think they are. Even if you looked at it from Northwestern's point of view, we don't get a bill from our supplier for that day, but we were still on our customer's behalf exposed to that market price on that day. We were exposed to that daily index price, and our customers are in turn exposed to that price.
I'll move on, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Fielder asked you about after the fact analyses, and your response was that there has been an after the fact comparison of the spot versus the fixed prices. However, what I had asked you about was an after the fact analysis of volatility itself. You had mentioned that standard deviation might be one method of measuring volatility itself. Has there been, so the record's clear, has there been any after the fact analysis of volatility itself?
I haven't presented any in this docket. I don't believe the other witnesses have, but I may be incorrect about that.
And to go with Commissioner O'Donnell's analogy to the storm in San Diego that never materialized, which I can confirm happens frequently down there. Is the storm in this case higher prices, or is the storm that we're trying to avoid volatility itself?
At the risk of being on the edge of the analogy holding up here, I think that the damage from the storm is what we're trying to protect against. That's the high prices, I think. If I'm thinking of the analogy correctly.
But I thought you said the goal is not to beat the market.
I did say that, yes.
But if the storm that you're trying to avoid is higher prices, isn't that trying to beat the market?
No, it's trying to reduce your exposure to that market. You're trying to take a window that doesn't have a board on it and put a board on it so that the window doesn't get broken in the storm.
But we did pay more in this case as a result of putting the window on. If we had simply exposed ourselves to the storm, I'll withdraw the question. How much more should we be willing to pay for price stability, in your opinion?
I don't know if that's a question that's answerable with a straightforward number. I think it's a question of how much risk you are taking off the table, and and what the risk appetite is of our customers. If you look through some periods, there are there's I guess I'd call it a negative cost to hedging. In other words, there are periods where it winds up being cheaper for customers. And in fact, I think if you look back at that 2015 to mid 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to ask the witness to just respond to the questions. Since I'm not being allowed to go back to prior periods, I don't think the company should be allowed to characterize prior periods either.
Why don't you re-ask your question?
Okay. The question was, how much more should we be willing to pay for price stability?
I don't think that question is answerable with a straightforward number. It depends on the circumstances. But again, referencing MCC 19 and the response to that, it shows that there is often a financial benefit, even though that's not the intention of hedging. The hedging is to reduce risk. There are many periods where it turns out to be cheaper than the index. And so I don't think that looking after the fact and coming up with a dollar amount and then trying to apply that to what was known at the time the transactions were entered is an appropriate way to look at.
Okay, but we do agree that in this particular tracker year, there was an over $11 million detriment, right? Financially.
Ignoring the fact that the fixed price transactions reduce the amount of exposure of customers. That's an important, in fact, the purpose of fixed price purchases to reduce that exposure.
And we keep using this word exposure, and I'll admit I'm not exactly sure what we mean. Can you say what is the risk that we're avoiding exactly through this activity?
We're avoiding the risk of unknown future events that cause higher prices.
But I thought you said higher prices and beating the market is not the point of this.
Reducing the risk is the point of this. Yes.
What risk?
Exactly what I'm saying. The risk of exposure to the spot market, which customers have because they need the natural gas.
The risk that the spot market will be higher, or just the risk that the spot market will be volatile?
The risk is always at volatility is always two directions, right? Prices can go up and they go down. So customers have exposure to that risk. What they're hurt by is when prices turn out higher in the spot market or the index market. So that's what we're trying to reduce their exposure to that potential. By entering a fixed price transaction, for that portion, you also remove the exposure or the potential for prices on that portion to be lower. That's why we maintain a balanced approach, some fixed price purchases, some index price purchases.
So if the risk we're trying to avoid here is higher prices, why is it not fair to judge this based on prices being higher or lower?
Mr. Brown, this commission has provided the guidance they've provided in many orders, discussion about a balanced approach between fixed price and index price, and B, judging the prudence of transactions based on the information that's known at the time, not on looking back after the fact with the benefit of 2020 hindsight.
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Redirect.
Can we take a short recess so we can pull up an exhibit?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, generally that practice is frowned upon because it gives parties an opportunity to coordinate with the witness. So I was going to ask for a break after we're done with this witness.
Hold on. So is the purpose to get the
Purpose is to get the exhibit in a restroom break, Mr. President. For counsel, we can leave the witness here. We won't talk to the witness.
I'm going to sustain the objection at this point in time. Go ahead and bring up your exhibit.
Okay, Mr. President, may I proceed?
Philip, do you have to accept them?
And I can.
Hold on, please, counsel. All right, please proceed.
Thank you. Before we get to this exhibit, just want to ask a couple clarifying questions based on the prior ones. As far as you know, do customers end up paying for that intra-month volatility eventually?
Yes, like if you don't enter fixed price purchases, then customers are fully exposed to whatever that intra-month spot price turns out to be.
Okay. And as this relates or translates to customer rates, is there another witness in this docket that could potentially better, or I guess answer that question?
There may be, I think Mr. Hanson could do that, possibly Ms. Rich as well.
Okay, thank you. Just going back to the discussion of evaluating volatility, did Northwestern continue to evaluate volatility and market conditions after it made every gas purchase in this tracker period?
Yes.
All right. We'd like to pull up MCC 019, which has been admitted. See that, Mr. Steinmetz?
Yes, I can.
Could you just describe for the commission broadly what this exhibit represents?
Yes, so this exhibit shows the volume and cost of our fixed price and index price purchases by month going back to 2015.
Okay, thank you. And because I know I was limited earlier, we're limited to the tracker period. Could we please scroll down here? Are there months and indicated in this exhibit that fixed price purchases, I guess in the Consumer Council's framework would benefit customers from a price standpoint?
Yes, there are.
Do you know how much that was?
I don't recall the total. I believe that the dollar amounts in some months were over $4 million. I don't recall the details of that.
And just broadly speaking, since we discussed pricing earlier, is there any maximum for how high market prices can go now?
No, I don't believe there is. I think, that is just driven by supply and demand.
Does Northwestern have a crystal ball to predict the future?
No, we don't.
And turning back to that, so it's your position that Northwestern should not enter fixed price contracts for the purpose of beating the market?
Right. The purpose of entering fixed price contracts is to maintain a balanced approach consistent with our supply plan and with commission guidance, and to reduce customers' exposure to or risk associated with market prices.
And from the discussion about the Consumer Council's witness, Mr. Duncan, about his math earlier, do you understand that math is only for the comparison of fixed price purchases to index in 3 months during 2022?
I believe that's correct.
And then just 3 months, or for the months of in 2023 for the months of April, May, and June?
I believe that's correct as well.
What do you think a reasonable premium is to secure, scratch that, to provide mitigation from market volatility?
It's difficult to put a specific dollar amount on that. I will just say that when you enter a fixed price purchase, you're not paying a premium. You are transacting at a known price. Now, that price might turn out to be higher or lower than the spot price, and over time that'll go up and down. I think if you look at the whole history provided in MCC 19, you know, the difference would be 1.5 or 2% as of the last date of that. If you looked a year earlier, it would have been flipped the other direction. So hard to put a specific number on it.
Just backing up big picture, and you described Northwestern's short position. How does that relate to market volatility?
Right. And again, it's really the customers who have that short position. Northwestern, of course, is managing that supply portfolio. What that means is that absent fixed price purchases, customers will be exposed to whatever that market price turns out to be on the entire volume. And the fixed price purchases reduce that amount that it is subject to the risk or exposure to the market.
Okay, thank you. Turn into the storm window analogy. Do you agree that the discussion about the ultimate price or the storm window necessarily relies on hindsight?
It does. If in the analogy as it was presented, if the storm turns out not to hit, then in that analogy, you spent some money to prepare for that. And if you hadn't spent that money, everything would have been fine. The problem is you don't know that at the time you're making those preparations. You need the hindsight to evaluate, or if you evaluate it using the hindsight, then you're ignoring what you knew at the time you made the decision.
So we're removing hindsight from this. Do you believe that Northwestern's purchasing decisions were made in the best interest of customers?
Yes, I do.
And are you aware of commission guidelines concerning this topic?
Yes, I am.
Do you believe Northwestern acted consistently with those guidelines?
Yes, I think Northwestern acted consistently with those guidelines and with past commission orders.
I guess more specifically, could you, what guidelines are you aware of?
Couple sets. The commission provided a set of gas procurement guidelines some time ago, I believe, back in 2005. That's one set of kind of formal guidelines I'm aware of. I'm also aware that the commission has specifically noted in other orders that no one has a crystal ball and that the prudence of transactions can't be judged after the fact.
Do you think it's proper for Northwestern to rely on 100% index prices?
No, I don't.
Has Northwestern ever been advised by the commission not to do that practice?
Yes, I believe, again, going back sometime to the early 2000s, I believe Northwestern might have might have had a disallowance for that very thing, relying entirely on index purchases.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, what would you like to do with this witness?
We temporarily excuse Mr. Steinmetz.
All right, Steinmetz, you're temporarily excused. I know there was a request to have a break, so we will accommodate that request. The time is now 10:46 a.m. Why don't we take a 13-minute break now? We'll go, time is now 10:47. We'll go off the record and reconvene at 11 o'clock and continue with Northwestern Energy's case in chief.
But maybe we need to buy another adapter, George, on this computer. Well, yes. Fine, thank you. How are you? Do you have information that I want to talk about?
You need to mute.
Vice President Fielder, are you still on? Vice President,
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you.
all right, thank you. Time is now 11:01 a.m. We will go back on the record. We had left off with concluding the testimony of Mr. Steinmetz. Northwest Energy, it's still your case in chief. Would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Northwestern would call Luke P. Hansen.
Good morning, Mr. Hansen. You were sworn in, I believe.
Yes, I was.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hansen.
Good morning.
Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
Luke, Luke, Hansen, Hansen.
And your business address?
11 East Park, Butte, Montana. Zip code is 59701.
Who is your employer?
Northwestern Energy.
Mr. Hansen, did you submit pre-filed testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Submit pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
And do you have before you what's been pre-marked as Exhibit NWE 4?
Yes, I do.
Could you take a moment and review that document?
Okay.
Is that a true and accurate copy of your pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits?
Yes, it is.
And if I were to ask you the same questions here today under oath, would your answers be the same?
Yes, I would.
Do you have any corrections or modifications to your testimony?
No, I don't.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the admission of NWE 4.
Mr. Brown, any objection to the admission of NWE 4?
No objection.
WE 4 is admitted. Please proceed.
All right, and with that, I would tender Mr. Hansen.
All right.
Oh, back up one step, Mr. President. Mr. Hansen, do you have NWE 5 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Is that your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this matter?
Yes, it is.
Please take a moment to review it. Is that a true and accurate copy of that rebuttal testimony?
Yes, it is.
Do you have any corrections or modifications?
No, I don't.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for the admission of NWE 5.
Mr. Brown,
No objection.
NWE 5 is admitted.
At this time, Northwestern would tender Mr. Hansen for cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Hansen.
Good morning, Mr. Brown.
Could you start by just describing any limitations or parameters that constrain Northwestern's existing gas hedging program?
Northwestern Energy uses a gas procurement program using a combination of fixed and index purchases to serve our customers. I am unaware of any limitations regarding that program.
Okay, so there's no price triggers, for example?
Yes, there would be. In 2012, the commission asked Northwestern not enter into transactions when the price was above $7.
And that still constrains your gas hedging program today?
That's correct. I would take that back, where we do not enter into fixed price transactions when prices are above $7.
And that's purely because of the commission's prior direction? I mean, if you thought it would be a good thing, let's say for Northwestern and its ratepayers to enter into a fixed price transaction above $7, you still wouldn't do it. Is that right?
What Northwestern would do is we would analyze all the information in the market at that time. If we felt it was appropriate to go outside of this, we would certainly communicate that with external stakeholders.
Okay. How about measures of volatility as triggers for gas hedging?
Measures of volatility are one way to address the price of natural gas, but there are many different ways to address the price of natural gas. Specifically, the price change itself without the volatility and the effects of the price changes on our customers is simply one way to analyze. gas procurement strategies.
Okay, but do you use measures of volatility either before, let's say before you enter these transactions to decide whether to enter these transactions?
Well, as I just said, volatility is only one way to address it. We do modeling, as we've shown in response to data request MCC 22, about the effects of the high prices that we were seeing on our customers. And if prices were to go higher, the effects of those prices and how difficult that would have been for our customers.
Okay, well, let's look at MCC 22. Can you pull that up, please? And let me preface this by just saying that I understand that what we've said, so-called beating the market or using hedging to achieve lower overall costs is not one of the goals. So I understand that. I'll just preface this by saying that. But I am going to ask in that if you look at the box there in the upper right that talks about annual gas supply costs, is this the modeling you did before entering the fixed price transactions in this case?
What this represents, yes, is the effect of the potential prices and what that would have on our customers.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but does this then show that if prices stayed at $3, the annual gas supply costs, the model you did before entering these transactions showed that the annual gas supply costs would be higher, specifically $65,500,000 compared to $56,500,000 with the fixed purchases as opposed to without the fixed purchases?
So what this shows is at the time we were looking at these transactions, the price was $6. So if we would have decided to not mitigate that risk and leave 100% to the market and prices did fall, the annual cost for the purchase portion of our portfolio would be $56.5 million. If we would have mitigated that risk and taken a portion of that at $6 and the market prices fell, then the cost would have been $65.5 million.
Okay, I apologize. I'm a little confused because I'm trying to just focus on the $3, comparing the prices at $3, but let's go with $6. Does this show that if prices were at $6, like you said, and stayed at $6, that the total annual gas supply costs would have been the same with or without the hedging?
That's correct.
Okay. But at $3, overall costs are higher with the hedging. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then if prices got up to $11, overall costs would have been lower with the hedging.
That's correct.
Okay. And so did you say that you assumed or expected that, well, never mind. I'll withdraw that. Okay. I mean, I guess looking at this, is any of this sort of a trigger in terms of deciding to do the hedge?
What this represents is a potential of where prices could go based upon market intelligence. So from a simple risk reward perspective, we wanted to quantify what the effects of the prices could be for our customers. And as you can see that, yes, if prices were to fall back and we did hedge, customers would pay a little bit more for this risk that we removed from the market. But if prices would have went to where the potential, what market intelligence was telling us, customers could be paying significantly more if we didn't.
And you knew all this at the time you entered the transaction. This is not 2020 hindsight, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of quantities, is there a trigger or any parameter or limitation on quantity when you're deciding whether to hedge, how much to hedge?
We certainly will not purchase more than our load is. For the decisions that we made in 2022, I think it's appropriate to realize that
those were a small portion. It represented roughly 12% of our annual load. When we compared that to the decisions that were made in 2023, that market price had declined compared to the market price in 2022. So we removed more of that risk because of the decline in prices.
And you said you wouldn't hedge more than your load. Is that a self-imposed limitation? Or
Our energy supply policy does not allow us to purchase more than we need to serve customers.
where does that policy exist or come from?
It's Northwestern's internal policy.
Okay. And then in terms of time period, Mr. Chairman, I'm getting some feedback here. I don't know if my volume got turned up or. Okay, if it's okay with you, I'll do my best. Is there any limitation on how far into the future you can hedge, like a year, 2 years, 6 months?
I believe our energy supply risk policy says 2 years.
Okay. And again, that's a parameter or a limitation that's essentially self-imposed by Northwestern.
It's a Northwestern guideline.
Okay. How big is the team at Northwestern who decides when and how much gas supply to hedge?
The gas supply department would consist of myself for Montana customers only. It would be 3 of us, myself, the director, and an analyst who does some work for us. But we do have an energy supply oversight board where we discuss strategies, and that would be, I believe there are 6 people on that.
And does the board have to sign off before you make a specific hedge?
They do not.
Who ultimately signs off on these hedges that you described in your letters to the commission?
We discuss those with the Energy Supply Board. We've discussed those externally with stakeholders, including the staff for both the the Public Service Commission and the Montana Consumer Council as well. These transactions were done within our risk policy.
Okay, but is there somebody at Northwestern who ultimately authorizes entry into a specific fixed price hedge?
That decision would be based on, depending on the limits as far as how much the dollar amount is, that would be myself or my director.
And who's your director?
Mr. Steinmetz.
Okay.
At the time of the 2022 transactions, it was Kevin Markovich.
Okay. And so now that's Mr. Steinmetz?
That's correct.
Do you know whether let me ask it this way. How does Northwestern benefit from the hedging that we're disputing in this case?
We provide our customers with stable, reasonable bills.
And how does that benefit Northwestern?
That benefits Northwestern because customers have the ability to pay those bills.
But those bills were higher as a result of the hedging in this case, right?
The market had increased significantly since the beginning of 2022. Just the index portion prior to making those hedges, we'd seen market prices go up that affected our customers' bills in the amount of 86%. So we identified the risk, as the commission has advised us that it's appropriate to do. We communicated that risk externally. And then we transacted on those to help mitigate that risk for our customers. Using hindsight, as Mr. Brown has asked, Yes, during the summer of 2022, due to factors outside of Northwestern's control, market prices did set the index prices when they became the prompt month did settle lower than the fixed price purchases.
And so how does, just to go back to my question, how does Northwestern benefit from engaging in this decision-making process of whether to hedge or not? Why wouldn't the company be more assured to recover costs if it simply didn't take on this activity?
No, the commission has provided us guidelines to use a balanced portfolio to serve our customers. That balanced portfolio consists of fixed price purchases that removes a portion of the portfolio. It removes a portion of that risk from the portfolio. It provides bill stability and it reduces the potential for extraordinarily high prices. Another component of our portfolio would be index prices. The majority of our supplies are purchased at index prices. That gives customers exposure to the market. So when prices do reduce, it helps lower the average cost that customers pay. But during times when index prices do increase, that exposure can be tough for customers.
So you're saying reducing prices is part of the reason for the hedging then?
Reducing customers' exposure to the risk of higher prices.
So how is that different than trying to beat the market?
Because what we're doing, if you're talking about beating the market, that's speculating, be taking a position with no firm evidence. What we're doing is we are taking a balanced portfolio approach, looking at all of the supply and demand information in the market at that given time. And if we take that to 2022, where we saw market prices increase so significantly, many of those factors, I mean, we had the war in Ukraine that led to record high liquid natural gas prices. We saw electric generation because there's been such a reduction of other thermal facilities. So a lot of natural gas is being used for electric generation. Natural gas storage balances, as reported every Thursday by the Energy Information Administration, were showing that the balances in the storage were significantly less than they had historically been. So that's the demand side. On the production side, you can't ramp up production overnight. It takes
Mr. Chairman, can I just, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Hanson, but can we just answer my questions directly? The question was, trying to remember the question now, Mr. Chairman. You had said that you're trying to protect consumers from higher prices. Doesn't that require speculation as to which direction prices are going?
No. What we're doing is we are looking at all the supply and demand information in the market, and we're taking a calculated approach to reduce risk for our customers. We're not speculating. By definition, speculation is to take a position with no firm evidence. We're not doing that. We're taking a calculated approach, looking at the information we have in the market at that time.
And the purpose is to protect consumers from higher prices.
It's to remove a portion of the risk from customers to provide stable bills and to remove customers' exposure from potentially extraordinarily high prices. Yes.
Do you think you achieve the goal of protecting consumers from higher prices in this tracker year?
Yes, I do. Considering the backdrop of everything that we had seen in the market, yes, I do.
Even though we paid $11 million more as a result of this?
I think it's important to quantify that number. As the commission has stated, using hindsight is not appropriate. Now, we are not questioning Mr. Donkin's math. In his testimony, he talks about the summer price purchases for July, August, and September of 2022. And then he talks about the summer of 2023 purchases, which, yes, those prices did finish lower. However, what he's not talking about are the fixed price purchases that we had, as shown in MCC 19. From November 2022 to March 2023, we did have higher prices on the index than we did on fixed prices. So that would reduce your number by $4.2 million.
Were those the same fixed price contracts that were referenced in your letters to the commission?
They were not.
Okay, so you talk about exposure to the market, but those other types of fixed price purchases are part of that balanced portfolio that is not exposed to the index. Is that right?
Those fixed price purchases were reducing that exposure to the market, very similar to what we've done for many years.
Is there some terminology? Boy, might get some weird feedback here, but it wasn't there before. But is there some terminology that we could use in this hearing to distinguish between the fixed price purchases that were referenced in the letters to the commission, which we are disputing and contesting, and the other fixed price purchases that you're now raising in the winter?
What we're talking about, and we've provided these in MCC 19, the fixed price purchases during the summer that you're talking about, we felt it was important to communicate this to commissioners and to outside parties. There were extraordinary times during this, during these times. During the winter, we always have the risk of higher prices. So we have reduced the risk for customers during the winter and the summer. But I think segregating those two, the letters were meant to communicate to outside parties the extraordinary circumstances that we were seeing.
Okay, and just for the record, you keep referring to MCC 19. That was not provided until discovery on rebuttal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there some kind of adjective or description we can use so we know which fixed price hedges which fixed price transactions we're talking about? Or in your mind, is there no difference? Same counterparties, same contracts?
All fixed price transactions are used to reduce the risk to our customers. We specifically sent letters to communicate to outside parties of the extraordinary market circumstances that we were seeing in the summer of 2022, and then also what we were seeing with many of the same risks during the fall of 2022 for the purchases that were made for the summer of 2023.
So why did you not send letters with respect to the fixed price purchases in the winter?
Northwestern has used a balanced portfolio approach for a number of years. As you can see, Mr. Brown, if you look at MCC 19, all the way back from 2015 until 2023, many of those months we've used fixed price purchases as part of the balanced portfolio approach.
Okay, I'm struggling to understand. Is there any real distinction between the fixed price transactions that you spoke of in your two letters and these other fixed price transactions that you're saying are routine going back for a decade?
No, they're all part of a balanced portfolio. The circumstances behind the summer of 2022 and 2023, we wanted to communicate that externally. As I think it's important to remember, if you look back at our bills from January 2022 up until June of 2022, when we had just index price purchases, the gas portion of that bill had increased 86%. So this was, we felt it was important to communicate to our customers and to our external stakeholders.
Were any of the non-lettered fixed price transactions in the winter injected into storage?
That's a good question, and thank you for letting me clarify what
Welcome.
The storage season looks like. Typically in the natural gas industry, natural gas is injected from April through October and then withdrawn during the winter months from November through March. So any of those purchases that were made during the winter months, they're not injected. We're withdrawing at that time. So what that's doing is that's offsetting market purchases.
And what is the time period for those other fixed price transactions? How far in advance do you enter into those contracts versus actually purchasing the gas?
Sometimes it can be many months. Sometimes it can be mid-month.
What was it in this tracker year?
There were a couple different transaction dates. I believe the first transaction was 1 year in advance, and then the rest of those were done up just before the start of the winter season, or as a month went on, as the season went on through the winter.
Do any of those occur within a month?
Sometimes they do. As an example of what we saw this last January, we saw cold weather coming in the middle of the month. So we have the ability to reduce that risk for our customers making a balance of the month purchase And we did that for a portion of the portfolio.
And do you recall, it was either 1 or 2 trackers ago, I believe it was President's Day weekend, where there was a big price spike. I believe you were involved in that. And index prices went very high. And because it was a long weekend, I believe it was one of those fixed price transactions within a month. Is that correct? That you did for that President's Day weekend? No? Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was the manager of gas supply in February of 2021. We, Northwestern at that time, did not base load supplies on the south end of our system. The price that Mr. Brown is talking about that's correct. During that weekend, prices were $173 on the south end of our system. So we had to purchase spot supplies to serve our customers. I referenced that in my testimony, that over a 4-day period, I believe we purchased 40,000 decatherms, and it cost us $7 million.
But didn't you fix some of the prices for that weekend?
No, we didn't.
Okay. But your load, yeah, it's better. Thank you. Your load was greater than 40,000 though, right?
Those were just the incremental purchases on the south end of our system.
Okay. So going into that, what I'm getting at is entering these fixed price transactions on much shorter time frames. So going into that President's Day weekend, were there any fixed price transactions that you had entered within that month already?
Not within the month. I believe we had some purchases on the north end of our system for supplies that were base loaded. They were flowing every day.
And how far in advance would you have fixed those prices?
I can't answer that.
But like a week, a month, a year, ballpark?
Probably a couple months.
And did we ultimately contest those very high prices that were paid at the spot market that in the President's Day weekend of 2021?
We had a series of data requests. Those purchases were ultimately approved, but that's what I think is important here to recognize is that Northwestern.
Sorry, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if we contested those.
After a series of data requests, they were approved.
Was it 3 rounds of data requests we did?
I believe so.
Were those prices higher than the prices? Never. I'll withdraw that. Never mind. So besides sort of customers, I guess, being happy with stable bills month to month, how does Northwestern benefit from doing this hedging activity? And I guess I'm wondering, because this has been a contested issue repeatedly over the years. So how does the company benefit from doing this?
I believe I already answered that.
And the answer was that customers have stable bills?
Yes, the customers have stably, reasonably priced bills. It removes a portion of the portfolio from a customer's risk.
And in this particular year, the bills were higher, but they were stable, and that's the benefit to the company. That's your testimony?
My testimony would state that the access to the index price purchases using hindsight helped lower customers' bills during this case. During the summer months, using hindsight, the fixed price transactions did end up settling higher than the index price transactions. During the winter, that was not the case.
Why did Northwestern not present this in rebuttal? You're saying that that the amount should be reduced by something like $4 million. Is there something in the record that
MCC 19 details?
Do we have those contracts?
You do not have those contracts.
Are you suggesting that Mr. Donkin's calculations should be changed at this point?
The calculations that Mr. Donkin created for, I'm not disputing the math for July, August, and September of 2022, and nor the math for the beginning of 2023. I believe Mr. Donkin also estimated some prices for August and September of 2023, where now we have the actual data, the actual settled prices at that time that are presented in MCC 19.
And
Because
why did we not get those until rebuttal if that was August of 2023?
those weren't asked for, and it's outside the tracker year as well.
Okay.
Perhaps saying it a different way. When Mr. Donkin wrote his testimony, he had to estimate some future prices.
For the next tracker year, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's your testimony that the fixed price transactions for the summer were the result of extraordinary circumstances,
Yes.
and that the winter fixed price transactions are more routine that we see every year?
Yes.
Okay. And has Northwestern ever done these fixed price transactions for the purpose of injecting the gas into storage before?
Yes, we have. If you look at MCC 19, there are many months that Northwestern has bought fixed price purchases during injection season. And a portion of those a portion of those fixed price supplies go to serve customer load, and a portion of those are injected into storage.
So why did you write a letter this time to the commission?
Because of the extraordinary circumstances that we were seeing and the effects on customers' bills.
That you were already seeing?
That we were already seeing, yes.
And you were worried about higher prices in the future?
Yes.
So you entered these to protect consumers from the higher prices possible in the future?
Yes.
Is it true that the monthly gas tracker used to be calculated based on a rolling 12-month forecast of gas costs?
We still calculate on a 12-month, as far as a continually rolling 12-month, not since I've been the manager of gas supply, but we still use a 12-month tracker where if we set the rates at the beginning of the tracker, say July 1st, the next month is an 11 months left. Then we would have 10 months the following month. So it's the total 12-month tracker. It's not a continually rolling 12-month tracker.
So can you just explain, what do you base the monthly rate changes on?
Two things. The futures prices that we anticipate in the future, and then we also have some deferred account activity based upon when we're estimating those costs or revenues, how those actually turn out to be. So those are the two main components that change within a tracker.
So the second one's the over-under collections, basically? Are some of the over-under collection dealt with in the monthly tracker changes?
The differences are dealt with in the monthly tracker changes.
Okay. And as to the first one, the forecast, over what period of time is that futures forecast?
It's based through the tracker year. So as an example, if we're looking at July 1st, we're running the futures prices through the entire tracker year. If we're changing rates for January, we are running those futures prices for February through June.
Okay. Do you know whether doing this kind of hedging enhances Northwestern's cash flow?
No, it wouldn't. In the fact that the fixed price purchases would be paid at the exact same time index price purchases are paid in the month of delivery.
Well, right, but you can budget because you know the price and then you pay exactly that, as opposed to not doing the hedging. You might need to have more cash on hand to be able to pay for price spikes.
During extraordinary price spikes, I suspect that could be true. But once again, these fixed price purchases are to reduce the risk for customers.
Do you think there's ever a time when it's good for consumers to experience price signaling from the market?
We still have a majority of our portfolio exposed to the market.
Okay, but you do have storage, which is a form of, it's not index priced when you pull it out.
Those molecules are already paid for.
Right. And you paid a certain amount for all that gas and storage, and there's a certain amount there. So is it fair to say that when you pull gas out of storage, it reflects kind of an average of all the injections?
Yes, as you can see in our tracker filings.
So is it fair to say that storage protects consumers from price volatility?
No. While you have a fixed price that you know that those injections are based upon, when you are withdrawing that during the winter, those molecules may not be subject to price volatility, but as those molecules that are going to be injected into storage are procured, those are subject to potentially high prices and
Sure.
price volatility as well.
Sure. I was referring to when you're pulling the gas out of storage, there's no volatility there at that point in the during the heating season, right?
Those molecules have already been paid for.
Right. And is storage a form of cross-season hedging then?
I wouldn't say that. What I would say is there are times when we purchase natural gas in the summer and the price ends up being higher during the winter months, but there are certainly times that that's not the case as well.
And then Northwestern owns some production fields as well, right?
We do.
Do you see that as a form of hedging?
Those reduce the amount of exposure that the customers pay. Yes.
Do you know whether, let's use 20/20 hindsight here, whether the production fields have beat the market since they were purchased by Northwestern?
Once again, that is not the intent to beat the market.
I understand that.
There have been months that the company-owned assets the revenue requirement has been higher, and there have been months that the revenue requirement has been lower than the settled index prices.
But generally, since they were purchased, can you generalize about whether we've paid more or less for production from your fields than we would have if we'd been exposed to the market?
I haven't done that math.
And do you do any after the fact measuring of volatility itself to inform future hedging activities?
As I mentioned, Mr. Brown, volatility is only one aspect to look at. We do review the results of fixed price and index price transactions to see if there are lessons that can be learned.
Did you analyze the actual volatility that materialized during this tracker year?
Volatility, no, but with the settled prices, yes.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. This is time for Commissioner questions, Vice President Fielder. Vice President Fielder. We'll circle back with her. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. So talking about the price volatility and the portion that I read, final order is 6683D, that's on your testimony right here. Interesting, you refer to that on page 3 as commission recommended guidelines. And then you say here that the guidelines state utilities should provide natural gas default. So it's not a requirement, specifically on there. But so providing natural gas default, adequate, reliable, stably, and reasonably priced natural gas. Here's my question. What tools does the company have in order to address the stability portion of the recommended procedure?
The only tools that the company has to mitigate that risk for our customers would be the company-owned production and the fixed price purchases. And it's certainly worth noting that that company-owned production is declining every year,
right?
Thus exposing customers to higher volumes or higher percentages of volatility or potentially higher prices.
Just out of curiosity, when does the company expect that to be exhausted, the pressure to be exhausted?
I don't know that question, but what I do know is from 2016, the company-owned assets were producing around 6 million MMBTUs per year. In this tracker period, they were around 3.7 million MMBTUs per year. So they certainly are declining.
Thank you. Let's see what, it seems to me that Consumer Council is questioning the practice of what's called hedging, but keeps on going back to the fact that it resulted in an $11 million loss. Do you have any feeling if it had been opposite and there had been an $11 million gain that the MCC would be having this hearing?
I don't believe we would.
Mr. Chairman, that question called for speculation. I'd ask that answer be stricken and that Commissioner O'Donnell ask that question to our witness, Mr. Donkin.
I'm going to overrule that objection. I believe, Mr. Brown, you can ask that question to Mr. Donkin if you.
It's my understanding I don't have the opportunity to live direct at the hearing today. And I guess I would object also on foundation. I'm not sure what basis or grounds Mr. Hansen has to know the answer to that question.
Your point is well taken to Mr. Donkin. I'm still going to overrule that objection. Certainly, Commissioner O'Donnell has the right as the decision maker in this case to ask questions to clarify the record. I would also say that the full commission will take the weight of that question into account in the final decision, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, I still had an additional question that I forgot.
Anyway, the objection's overruled. So, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. In page 11 of your testimony, you referred to, I have had discussions with natural gas purchasers from utilities with customers in Washington, Oregon, Texas, Minnesota, Colorado regarding their hedging strategies. And then you referred to an example of a utility that Cascade Natural Gas, which hedges 50% of its current year load requirements. I noticed that the company in this case only hedged 20%. That seems to be moderate. It strikes me as being prudent because other testimony said that the company's proposal could allow for 100% of hedging. So to use 20% sounds like it's a measured approach. What do you think of this company, Cascade Natural Gas, as a professional that used hedges 50% of its portfolio? Is that risky? Are there a situation dramatically different from that Northwestern faces?
No, it's not. They have an annual load that's around 50% larger than Northwestern's. Those 50% of the current year fixed price purchases that they hedge, those are well within their guidelines, and they've received cost recovery. I used to work for Cascade Natural Gas, and every year that I was there, we received cost recovery for those purchases. So getting back to your question, Commissioner, the 20% that we were talking about in 2023 or the 12% in 2022 were much smaller than many other utilities.
And was that because well, you as the decision maker, was that, I mean, why was it limited to that? Was it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it strikes me as that that's an approach to prudency by not betting the whole wad on the whole thing, but using a measured approach.
Yes, we understood the prices in 2022. They were higher than they'd been in 13 years. There was the potential for them to go higher, but we did not want to overextend ourselves or reduce too much risk for customers. So we understood there was the potential for those to go down as we modeled in MCC 22. So we thought it was better to take a balanced approach.
And one other thing, in terms of there was quite a bit of discussion about volatility. MCC wanted to talk about that volatility within a 1 month period. And that was, as pointed out, that evened out from billing period to billing period. So it was protected from the day-to-day volatility. However, as I recall, during this time in Southern California in particular, gas prices doubled, tripled, even quadrupled, in many cases causing a severe problem, whatever. So it seems like in Montana that was moderated quite a bit. It's different markets, different hubs. I understand all that, but.
Yes, and I guess what I would say is you're right. Mr. Brown has brought up a lot of discussion about intraday volatility. We account for that, the intra-month volatility, through our tracking period. And that's where I think it's important to recognize just the gas cost portion of our bill, of our customers' bills from January to June, when it was nothing but index price purchases. Those increased 86%.
Yeah.
And we still had a $5 million under collection that was carried forward to the next tracker year.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Vice President Fielder. Any questions?
No, I don't think so, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Pinochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so we've got some of our own gas fields that Northwest Energy owns. And your price, does it go up when the market value goes up, or is it a fixed cost no matter what?
It's a fixed cost
Oh,
that steps down every year through the revenue requirement. But the value of those molecules does not change with the market index.
this isn't in your testimony, but I'm sure the ratepayer is screaming at me. If you had more wells and drilled more wells, it would be a benefit for them. Oh, why don't we drill more wells? They tell me there's natural gas all over Montana.
I think a lot of that would depend upon who held the leases to those. Northwestern does have some on-system production that we do purchase from third parties that are not Northwestern owned.
Okay, I'll be encouraging more of that if I can. Let's talk a little bit about the hedging. Okay, so it looks like it was a bad hedge. We're talking about $11 million. When the hedge is right and you save money, I don't suppose we ever have a hearing to say, good job. Do you think there's more hedging saving money than losing money? And I kind of asked that question before. Has the ratepayer gained in the past few years more money by hedging, or has it been a bad gamble and they've lost money? And then the next question would be, perhaps if the answer is it's more of a loss to the customer, we should stop hedging altogether. What would your answer be for that?
Mr. Chairman, this wasn't my choice for the hearing. I think the past experience is very relevant here. However, since I'm not allowed to speak of it. I guess I would just ask the question be limited to this tracking period.
I will, the witness is directed to answer for this current tracking period to the extent you can.
Sure. There were months that the fixed price purchases, in addition to removing risk for our customers and mitigating that price volatility, that the index prices settled well above the fixed prices during the winter months of November 2022 through March of 2023 to an estimated $4.3 million.
Let me rephrase that question. I think the ratepayer that's going to be watching this hearing, or if there's an article on this hearing, the question is going to be, would you encourage, and I think I know your answer, but it's got to be asked, should we continue hedging because it's a savings for the ratepayer, or should we discontinue it because it hurts the ratepayer? What would your answer be for that?
Using a balanced portfolio approach is a prudent way to procure molecules for our customers. Understanding that the fixed price transactions that reduce the risks for our customers, sometimes those do end up settling higher than index prices. Sometimes they do settle lower than index prices. And that's where the exposure to the market comes from. A majority of our supply is still procured at market prices, giving customers the exposure to the market. If prices are decreasing, then customers get that exposure, and that helps reduce the customer's costs. If prices increase, then having those fixed price transactions, in addition to removing the risk for our customers, can provide an economic benefit as well.
Let's try this question. You're limited by how much you can hedge, a certain percentage. Is that correct?
We cannot purchase more fixed price molecules than we have for load.
If you could purchase more than you have for load, would there be a savings to the customer?
During certain tracker periods, there would be. During certain months, the index prices would settle lower.
Interesting. Thank you. No more questions.
Commissioner Bukacek?
Well, I appreciate Mr. Brown's question and the way you answered it in terms of the process by which you approve and disapprove the transactions with you and Mr. Steinmetz, and then that oversight committee. So I appreciate that. And I'm wondering if in a concise way that lay people could understand for the education of us and the public, when you're making these decisions, you're analyzing markets. Tim Sexton talked about how you use financial tools similar to those available in any financial market, including futures, options, swaps. I'm sorry. So Mr. Sexton talks about how financial tools you use similar to those available in any financial market, including futures, options, swaps. I'm just wondering, and then you got your own production, you got storage. If there's a way you could explain that process that you and Mr. Steinmetz go through in approving or disapproving. And I realize it's complicated, so wondering if there's a concise way to do that.
Using the financial transactions, let me address that portion first. When we're talking about swaps or calls or puts or costless callers, Northwestern does not perform those transactions. Instead, what we use is to mitigate the risk for our customers would be a combination of the company-owned supply and then the fixed price transactions. So on any given year, we know that we have to procure a certain amount of molecules to serve our customers during the summer and during the winter months. During the winter months, we know that we do not have enough pipeline capacity or on-system supply to serve our customers. So we need to have storage filled. We fill storage through a combination of index and fixed price purchases. Then during those winter months, we use a combination of the fixed price transactions, as we know the winter prices have potential to be extremely volatile. We use storage withdrawals, and then we use index price purchases as well when the loads get high.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us here today. I'm a little, I don't even know if I want to go down this road, but I'm going to. So I'm a little confused about your testimony this morning based on the numbers discussion that Mr. Brown walked through with you. So MCC calculates through the pre-filed testimony that the total 2022-23 total hedging losses are 13.1 million roughly. Do you dispute that number?
The $13 million that he talks about, it's broken out into 2 years for the summer transactions only. I agree with the math within a couple $1,000s for rounding for the 2022 period. For the 8-month calculation from April through October, Mr. Duncan used some estimated prices for, I believe it was August and September, because when he wrote his testimony, those prices were not known at that time. So he used some futures estimates. Now that we have those settled prices, you can see in MCC 19 that exact dollar amount.
And what is that exact dollar amount?
If you're looking for the summer prices only, I would have to, I guess I would have to have that pulled up.
No, I think your reference to the actual exhibit is adequate in this matter. I don't have any further questions for this witness. Before you go on, Mr. Brown, I've given more thought to your objection as to Commissioner O'Donnell's question. I'm going to overrule Northwestern's objection immediately anyway, but I will allow you to ask Commissioner O'Donnell's question to your own witness as part of your direct.
No objection.
All right, Mr. Brown, recross.
Yes, thank you. So would you agree with respect to the $13 million figure that in this docket, in this hearing, we're focused on technically the 2022 to 2023 tracking period?
Yes, specifically July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 23.
Thank you. That was my next question. So the July, August, and September of 2023 figures would be at issue potentially in the next tracking docket, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you turn to the attachment provided to MCC 28, which is the highlights of Cascade Natural Gas's portfolio design?
I believe, is that 28 or 27? Could you get that from my bottom, please?
I believe it's 28A, but
Thank you. Yeah.
would you agree that Cascade has multi-year hedging targets?
Yes,
Does Northwestern have that kind of parameter in its hedging strategy?
we have the ability to go 2 years with fixed price purchases.
But do you have like a stated kind of tiered schedule like this?
No, we do not.
And on the second page of that, with the where there's it's called hedge calculation table. Can you see that?
Yes.
And thank you to Ms. Norcott for pulling this up on the screen. Do you see the difference there between contracted base supply target and hedge target? In the top 2 rows?
Yes, I do.
Can you just explain what the difference is there?
Yes. Cascade hedges 50% of their total requirements. So if you look at the calculation, they have an annual load for year 1 of 36 million MMBTUs. The hedge target is half of that, two rows lower at the 18 million. So what they describe in their IRP with the 80%, what that represents is 80% of those annual loads. So meaning while they're hedging 50% of the total supply volumes, they're leaving 20% exposed to daily purchases.
Okay, but what I'm really focused on is the difference between the 80% and the 50%. Are there fixed price transactions that are not considered hedges? Or contracted supply let me ask this first. Is the hedging activity a type of contracted supply?
They have done both physical fixed purchases and financial hedges.
Okay. So the physical purchases would be the 30% delta between the 50 and the 80?
No, the physical fixed purchases would be, if you look at the forecast annual usage of 36 million and you go two rows lower, that's talking about the hedge target. So that's the 50% that will be removed from risk.
Right. I'm not talking, okay, I understand the 50%. Where is the supply coming from between the 50 and the 80%?
Those would be index purchases.
I thought you said that it's the 20%, the last 20% is index price.
They are hedging 50%. The remaining will be a combination of purchases that are made through different supply basins.
So what is contracted base supply?
Contracted base supply.
It's that first row.
At that point, they've already made commitments up to 80%. The rest of those will be used for day purchases. So there can be index purchases that would be first a month, and there can be index purchases that have been made on a daily basis.
Okay, so again, what does contracted base supply refer to specifically?
80% of the 36 million.
But what is it? Is it a day ahead purchase? Is it a month ahead? Is there a counterparty? Can you just describe what it means to contract supply?
Sure.
And that apparently that's not considered a hedge, right?
That's correct. As Mr. Steinmetz has testified, we have the ability to go ahead and procure molecules at an index price or as a fixed price. So what Cascade does is they make sure they have the physical molecules locked in at 80%. Then the remaining 20% are day purchases.
And how much of that 80% then is hedged? And what is the difference then? If they've already contracted for the molecules, why do they have to then go hedge that?
Of the 80%, a portion of that 80% are index price purchases, and a portion of that 80% are fixed price purchases to arrive at the 50% of the total portfolio value.
Okay. So you're saying some of the contracted supply is just at index prices then?
Yes.
Okay. Does Northwestern make this distinction that Cascade Natural makes between contracted base supply and hedged supply?
When we enter trades into our trading system, we denote if they're index price or if they're fixed price.
And so do you know whether all of that 30% difference between the 50 and the 80, is that all that would be an index priced contracted supply?
Yes.
Okay. And so the purpose of that is to guarantee the availability of the molecules, but you don't know what the price will be when you enter those contracts.
That's correct.
Okay. And if you did fix the price, would you then consider that to be a hedge?
Fixing the price would remove the risk for the portfolio. So yes, it's a hedge.
Do you know if Cascade has any storage?
Yes, they do have storage.
And do you know whether they fix the price for injections?
A portion of, as Cascade does 3-year hedges, a portion of those are at fixed prices and a portion would be at index.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. Northwest Energy. Redirect.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hanson, does your rebuttal testimony respond to the allegations of Mr. Donkin?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And just moving back to direct testimony, were the other fixed price purchases during that tracker year, were those included as part of an exhibit?
Yes, those would have been included in the work papers to LPH 1, I believe.
Okay, so those dollars were included in your exhibits.
The molecules and the dollars, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna pull up MCC 22 really quick. Okay, Mr. Hanson, can you just give us in the commission a high-level view of what this exhibit shows?
Yes. The tab that we're looking at looks at the analysis that we did for 2022 with when we did this analysis, natural gas prices were around $6 per MMBTU. We knew we have to purchase around 18 million decatherms to serve our customers. And what this represents, this analysis shows the potential of where prices could go and what the effect of those prices would be for our customers. So if we were to not hedge anything, the top 4 rows shown in D2 through 5 represent if everything was left to market prices. And down below would be 6 through 9 says, what's the effect for customers if we remove a portion of this risk and see where prices go? And what we can see is if prices settled lower, then customers would be paying a bit more. But removing a portion of this risk with what we were hearing for the potential where prices could go, it could have been astronomical for our customers.
Were prices at $3 on June 1st, 2022?
They were not. In fact, they were above $6.
Did Northwestern expect prices to drop to $3 after June 1st, 2022?
Looking at the fundamental information that was in the market from demand, we've talked about the war in Ukraine leading to record high natural gas prices. We've talked about forecasted warm weather for the summer and how much natural gas was being used for electric generation. We've talked about storage balances being below normal. That's just on the demand side. None of those were anticipated to stop. Looking at the production side, it takes a long time to drill, to hook up a new well, to get production to market. So looking at the information that we had, there was no expectation that natural gas prices were going to be decreasing. And thus we felt it was prudent to reduce this risk for our customers.
Mr. Hanson, is 12% a small portion of annual load?
It is a very reasonable percentage of the annual load.
Would you say the same for 20%?
Yes, I would. especially when comparing that to Cascade Natural Gas that hedges 50%.
How long has Northwestern used fixed price purchases?
We've used a balanced portfolio approach for a number of years since the commission guidelines.
And the evidence in this case includes 2 letters sent to the commission, right?
Yes, it does.
You just explain what drove those letters at the time. Why did Northwestern send those letters?
Yes, these were extraordinary times. As I'd mentioned, the last time prior to 2022, natural gas prices had been above $8 was in December of 2008. So we'd seen an 86% increase in the gas cost portion of our customers' bills. We saw all of the supply and demand information that I just talked about. It was important for us to communicate to our external stakeholders, number one, what we were seeing in the market, number two, what the effects of these prices were going to be, and why we needed to mitigate these for our customers.
Who had the authority to make these purchases?
The gas supply department. I did.
Anyone else?
One of the transactions was above my purchase limit, so Kevin Markovich had to approve that transaction.
Okay. Mr. Hanson, do you have MCC 27 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Could you explain to the commission what you mean by asymmetrical risk?
What I mean by asymmetrical risk is natural gas prices have the ability to rise many more times than they do to fall. As the example that I used here, we've had a warmer than normal winter this winter for much of the winter. Due to that warmer than normal winter, natural gas prices were around $2 per MMBTU at the beginning of January. When we forecast the cold weather was coming in, we took the prudent step to reduce some of this risk for our customers. So we bought a balance of the month product at $2 and I believe it was 75 cents, knowing that natural gas prices could fall 50 cents to $1, or they could rise $10 to $15. And that's exactly what we saw. So that's the risk that our customers face every day. I mean, what we saw during this cold weather, AECO prices were north of 11. They traded at 25, but settled north of 11. CIG prices had traded as high as 50, but settled at 24. So we can reduce a portion of this risk, knowing that the prices can go down, $1, maybe $2, but they have the potential to rise, especially in what we saw in February of 2021, north of $100. So from a risk reward basis alone, this is another reason why this is prudent.
Does market price volatility last longer than one day?
Yes, it does.
Does Northwestern have any control over the various factors cited in your testimony that were for the purchases?
No, we do not.
Please pull up PSC 0013 or 013. And just before we go to this, turning back to that market volatility you just talked about, is there any upper market cap on index prices?
No, there's not. Unfortunately, we've seen prices. Our customers in Montana have had to pay $173. Our customers in South Dakota are exposed to a different basin, but they've had to pay over $300 before. And I have seen natural gas prices trade north of $1,000 per MMBTU.
Okay, and now switching gears to this data response PSC 013, just to the extent the Consumer Council asked you questions about whether Northwestern injects some fixed price purchases, what does this exhibit show?
Thank you. This shows for a number of years, Northwestern has used a balanced portfolio approach to serve our customers with a portion of supplies that during the summer months when natural gas is injected, a portion of those are procured at fixed prices and a portion of them are procured at index prices.
Is there a reason that 2020 and 2021 show 1% and 0%?
Yes, I think it's appropriate to understand the situation that we had during 20 and 21. During 2020, that was during the COVID pandemic. We were in a global recession. Natural gas prices were very low and were not moving much at all. So we didn't see the risk to our customers and thus did not purchase many fixed price molecules to serve our customers.
Does Northwestern consistently evaluate market conditions during a tracker year?
Yes, we do. Every day. That's our job.
And you did that for this 2022 to 2023 tracker year?
Yes, sir.
Just one more point. Why should Northwestern continue to have fixed price purchases as part of its portfolio?
Northwestern should continue to use a balanced portfolio approach consisting of fixed price purchases to provide customers with rate stability, to remove that risk from our customers. This balanced portfolio approach gives customers access to the market prices. Our index supply purchases do. So the combination of both of those helps reduce the risk for our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. I have no further questions.
What would council like to do with this witness?
May we temporarily excuse Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Hanson, thank you for your testimony. You're temporarily excused. All right, time is now 12:19 p.m. Before we go into break, it's my understanding, Northwestern, that you have one more witness as part of your case in chief. Is that correct?
We have two, Elaine Rich and Tim Sexton.
Okay. And that time is now 12:20 p.m. I think we'll take this opportunity to break for lunch. Why don't we reconvene in an hour, 1:20 p.m. We will go off the record at this time.